And good afternoon. My name is Ryan Belmore. Thursday, August 3rd, just past 2 p.m. We are continuing our conversations with candidates for Rhode Island's first Congressional District. And today we are chatting with Representative Stephen Casey, who is a Democrat running for the seat. And good afternoon, Representative.
Good afternoon, Ryan. Thank you for having me here.
Of course. Lots of questions to get to today, but I just want to let you start with tell us a little bit about yourself for those that may not know you.
Okay, I am a 17-year veteran of the Woonsocket Fire Department. I am also an 11-year veteran of the Rhode Island State House. I became a state representative. I was elected in 2012, served in the State House now for 11 years. From 2014, I became a deputy majority leader, and then I have chaired 3 committees in the last 5 years, starting in 2019 with the Special Legislation Committee. Then I was given the opportunity, and the Speaker requested that I take the new Health and Human Services Committee during the pandemic in 2021. And now, more recently, the Municipal Government and Housing Committee during the housing pandemic. So that's just a little bit. As far as previous background, I am originally from Massachusetts. I grew up in Melrose, Massachusetts, graduated high school in 1986, became an Eagle Scout in 1987, graduated college from Boston College in 1990 with a communications degree. And I worked for about 18 to 20 years in the financial services industry, serving in a capacity in management capacity in more in operations rather than financial money management. My last 8 years in financial services was with a mortgage broker firm from West Bridgewater, Massachusetts, where I was a mortgage originator. And then I became a fireman in 2006. So that is my career up till then. I've basically been serving the community in Woonsocket here for 17 and a half years as a firefighter and EMT. And that's my legislative experience, obviously the 10 years in the legislature as far as my government service is concerned.
I will give credit where it's due. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to chat with Don Carlson, who's also running for this seat. And he mentioned he was an Eagle Scout, and he also mentioned that you were. So he shared the Eagle Scout love.
That's nice. I didn't know that Don is an Eagle Scout. And we say, some people say was, I think, but once you do that, you always are. And, you know, if you conduct your life by the tenets of that organization, you know, trustworthiness and honesty and loyalty are your key factors there.
So, Stephen, people are going to be able to find out a whole lot more about your campaign at kc4congressri.com, kc4congressri.com. Everything spelled out there, for example, FOR instead of 4. But you have a lot going on. Why run for Congress? What made you decide to run for this seat, and when did you make that decision?
Well, I made the decision early on. Actually, this came about essentially early, actually at the end of March. And for me, the decision was relatively easy. At the time, there were 4 candidates that had declared their candidacy or had said they were going to run for office. Obviously, the declaration period actually took place after Congressman Cicilline had officially retired at the end of June. But at that point, you know, people announced their intentions to run for office. And at that time, I didn't see a candidate that, number one, represented me or my particular values or those of my constituents. So I said, this is now the time to go ahead and you know, take that opportunity and run for office and try to help, you know, create a better life for people in Rhode Island and for my community.
12 Democrats remain. What makes you unique? What should people consider? Why should people consider you when they're going to fill out the box here over the next couple of weeks? What separates you from the crowd?
Well, I think for me, as a candidate, I have a deep respect for constitutional rights. I think that, moreover, as an EMT and a firefighter, I've experienced what Rhode Islanders experience. I have literally, figuratively been in people's houses. I've literally been in everybody's house in Rhode Island. I understand the struggles of Rhode Islanders. I understand how people live. I understand what I believe that people need. But for me, I'm not going to tell people what I think they need. I am an extremely open and accessible person, and my constituents will tell you that. I pick up the phone when I can, and if not, I get back to people immediately. But I'm dedicated to fostering unity among our citizens. And as a legislator in the House for 10 years, I've been able to work to bring people together. I think that politics has divided our society, where people get to a point where they're not talking to each other just based on political ideology. And I think that we've lost that in our communities, and we've lost that togetherness. In the end, we're all human beings, and we need to put human beings first and deal with the political aftermath. I think that what we need to do is agree to disagree on certain things that we don't agree on, and work together on those things that keep us together, that we agree on, and work from those strengths and build consensus in our community and across the aisle politically.
Representative, what made you first want to get involved? What was the first push that made you want to get involved and run for politics when you ran to become a representative? What were the reasons then, and are they the same now?
I think basically service to community. For me, growing up during the summers in my time in high school and during the summer in college, I was a lifeguard, and having been an Eagle Scout, I've always had a sense of community. And as a child, growing up, my father served locally on the school committee and on the city council in the town that I grew up in. So that was a time for me to learn about community service, and I've basically been doing that all my life. So when I came to Woonsocket and when I got on the fire department, we had some difficult times here in Woonsocket financially, and I felt that maybe there was an opportunity for me to be able to help things on that level. And for me, I think it's about service to the community. It's about seeing the struggle. Woonsocket had some very, very difficult financial situations, and I felt that at that time I could possibly help. And very much the same as it is now. It was a grassroots type campaign. Family and friends supported me, and I went out and I knocked on doors, and I walked and I talked to people, and I just convinced them to give a new person a chance. And that's very much how it is today.
Yeah, I was wondering, what are you hearing when you're going door to door? I was wondering, what are you hearing when you're going door to door or meeting voters? What are some of the things you're hearing from people out there?
Well, right now I've had nothing but very strong encouragement from my community in general, and I've spent a lot of time at public events in other communities, and I'm hearing that people are looking for a little bit more moderation as far as the ideology is concerned, and I think that rings true throughout our district. I believe that there's a sense that I am a relatively moderate candidate, and I believe there is a sense for people who really don't have people are working, they're taking time, they're working 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, taking care of their families, and really sometimes don't have a lot of time to pay attention to the politics and the issues that are going on. And I think they need somebody that they know is similar, has similar values, and it will be watching out so that they don't have to be that much concerned with what's actually happening, to understand that somebody's there that has a good idea and an understanding of what people really need and want, and can take those things and move forward with them.
You're the first candidate to mention a moderate Democrat. I'm wondering if you could just define that, what it means for you and what that means for the voters if they choose you. What are they going to get out of you? Why is it important that you're moderate?
Well, I think I just have an overall sense of how I think that things should really work. I have a great deal of respect for, and I have a great deal of support from the business community in Rhode Island, and I am also a union firefighter, which when you try to mix those two things, normally there's not an easy gap. And essentially I've bridged that gap. I have a very unique way of looking at things, not specifically from one side or the other, but like an overall view. I like to call it the 50,000 foot, the helicopter view of things, and how certain pieces of legislation will affect certain parts of our community. And I think having that view and understanding how this works, how politics works, and how to bring consensus among people, I think that's a real value for our constituents, to understand that there's somebody there that understands how things will work. And I actually take a very long look at legislation to see the intended and unintended consequences of what we're actually doing and making when we make laws.
10 years in the House, what are some of your things that your fondest memories or most proud of that you've accomplished?
I think some of the things that I've accomplished, I think probably the most important and the part that I enjoyed the most was in the Health and Human Services Committee when we were in the pandemic. Essentially, the old committee was education, health, education, and welfare. And just because of the pandemic and all of the legislation that was going to be submitted, and we're going to have to make so many changes to the healthcare system, that I believe, the committee was split, and the speaker asked me to chair this committee. Being a first responder, I think he was relying on my ability as a first responder and my knowledge of that particular frontline responder mentality to be able to take the challenge and do that. What was great about it is using the resources that I had, I was able to learn the other parts of the industry, the insurance part, the hospital part, the community provider part of that business. And it was education by fire quickly because this had to happen fast. And it was one of those things where I had an opportunity to really learn the system. I think what came out of that was a very good piece of legislation that I sponsored was the Telemedicine Act, where we were able to codify telemedicine because during the pandemic you couldn't go to the doctor's office, or you couldn't travel around, and everybody was confined to their homes for a certain period of time if they were positive, and we were encouraged to do social distancing. So there was an opportunity to be able to use telemedicine and use what we're doing, the Zoom format, to meet with your doctor and to be able to take into account, not lose the actual healthcare services that we had, but to do that via telephone and via Zoom meetings, and to be able to create that opportunity where for a lot of people who have experienced travel issues, people who don't have vehicles, who their provider may be in another town or another place where they can't get to very easily, and to be able to do this over this media that we have now is a great opportunity. Number one, to lessen the burden of travel for people. It lessens the expense on Medicaid expenses to have to transport a patient to their doctor just for an appointment, where you can do it now over the internet. And I think also important about that is we were able to include that for mental health situations. So it's providers for primary care, mental health, as well as people who have substance use disorders, and also for people who are diabetic patients, where if you're having an issue, you can call your doctor, maybe straighten out your diet, straighten out your situation, so that you don't have to have so that you don't run into a medical emergency where you have to be transported to a hospital, which saves people, which saves our system, our Medicaid system, and our healthcare system a lot of money. So that's just one of the things that I think was extremely beneficial in my experience.
Granted, this was only one person, but I was recently speaking to a therapist in Rhode Island, and they said more people were reaching out and getting therapy and talking about their mental health than he has ever seen before. I see that as a positive thing. I think everybody could use, personally, I think everybody could use somebody to talk to. That is just, I think, just one example that more people are reaching out for help, which I think is positive. You and I have a connection. I was a first responder through high school in Western Coventry. So I was on the fire department out there, and so we have that fire department connection a little bit there. I went to school for fire science at CCRI, and
Really?
firefighter one out in Connecticut, in Moosup, and my EMT out of CCRI. But now I don't do any of that. So, but here we are. So you're really running to kind of put yourself out of a job, early retirement from fire department?
Yeah, I'm 17 years on the fire department. I don't. That's the one thing I think that when I win this election, I will regret is actually having to leave the job. It's for me, it's not a job. It's an occupation. I don't want to say it's a hobby, but it's a completely. It's actually a lifestyle. You live in a fire station with, a group of men and women for 48 hours out of your week, and they become your family and your friends. And that's something that I think I am going to miss extremely, but I promise everybody that I will come back and cook breakfast at least once a month and make sure they keep my feet on the ground, because I don't consider myself to be any better than anyone. And I truly want to remain grounded. Although this is a high level position, I feel that remaining grounded in my community and with my family and friends is probably the most important thing that I will need to do and that I want to do.
We talked about some of your accomplishments in the Rhode Island House, and I'm sure even in Rhode Island there are still Republicans up there, and you've had to work with them and on issues, and you've had to listen to them. When you get in Congress, there's 435. It's almost split even. Tell us a little bit about how you've worked across the aisle here in Rhode Island and how you believe you can work across the aisle in DC.
Well, I think politics itself has become polarized, and it's actually disappointing to me because I have friends that are on both sides of the aisle, and for me, I put people first and not politics. I want to be able to have and keep friendships among my peers, and my peers and colleagues include Republicans and Democrats. And for me, it's not about the label. It's about getting to know people and to understand human nature. And I think, when I first got up to the State House, I didn't have a political experience other than running for office when I was, or helping my father run for office when I was a kid. So for me, the political experience and the legislative experience, that was a little bit of an education. But what I know is that everything to me is about relationships and being able to form relationships with people on a human level before you actually get into the politics and the meat of legislation. And I've been able to do that. I'm a relatively gregarious person. I'm not shy, and I'm able to introduce myself pretty much to anybody. And I've forged lasting friendships with people who are still here at the State House and people who have left and not run for office again. And the ability to do that, to be able to talk to people who have a completely different ideology and to bring others together from both sides of the aisle. I think that, I like to say sometimes I'm the glue in the machine. I just try to bring things together, get things to stick. And then, we can talk about things and be friends on a human level and then get to the actual politics. And I think part of that, like I said earlier, is to be able to work on the things that we all agree on and keep us together. And those are the things that we can expand upon further. And I think it's important to be able to create those relationships. And there's, be one of, well over 400 representatives. I think I have the opportunity, I think I have the talent, and I think I have the mental wherewithal to be able to do that, to find a common bond with pretty much anybody, and then work a relationship from there. And once you get an understanding of what makes people tick, and what their ideas and what their relationships are with other people, then you can forge those relationships, and I think you can get things done. And like you said, being a freshman, that's also very, for some it might be intimidating. I'm pretty much, I'm not afraid of anything. So I take this as an opportunity, and I don't take it as a challenge. Like I said, I don't have a difficult time meeting people and shaking hands, and I don't get starstruck either. So I'm just going to remain myself, and I think that that's what's important. I'm gonna keep true to my values, remain who I am, and I need to be able to sleep at night. I'm not gonna change my ideology or feel pressure when I get up there. And I think people will understand that once they meet me.
I really appreciate the answer, because I think too often, if somebody has an R or a D in front of their name, we automatically have these conceptions, or we don't like them, or right now, we're putting people in buckets, and there's a lot of local campaigns and a lot of national campaigns. The MAGA Republicans, we need to keep them away. We're scaring people into voting a different way. And dare me say this, and I said this, not you, but even a MAGA Republican could have a good idea that you would agree with, if you paid attention enough. So
well, interestingly enough, having that label, I think it. I don't understand what's wrong with making America great, but when you label people like that, I think there's a certain negativity that some people have with that type of comment. But the problem is, when we start labeling people, then we're being prejudicial, and we're not giving people a chance on a human level to express who they are and understand. And I think that's part of what the problem is in the country. That's part of what the problem is even on a state level. I've had conversations, and I've overheard conversations of people in the state house that somebody says, well, what do you do when the Republicans come around? And I go the other way. I don't even talk to them. And I think that's the beginning of the end for us. And we really need to get away from that type of thinking. So I
agree. I mean, the majority of voters in whatever district they are representing put that person there. So they're representing somebody else, not themselves. Wondering, you could pick the number. Let's talk priorities. What would your priorities be if elected? I don't know if you want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whatever. Just give me a couple priorities, and I'll tell you what. You could probably read a whole lot more about them on caseyforcongressri.com. Just want to make sure people head there as well for more information. We're going to touch on a lot here, but give me, a couple priorities you're thinking of as you head that way, possibly head that way.
One of my priorities is this. I have a deep respect for the fact that we send foreign aid to certain countries to help preserve democracy and to help create democracy around the world. We do have a pretty good system here in the United States, although some people think that politically there's nothing good about politics. But my concern is that when we send foreign aid to other countries, we need to have an accountability of how that money is being spent, to make sure that the taxpayer dollars that we're spending are being utilized in a way that's beneficial and that we're not wasting money. But what I see and what bothers me and what I would propose is that when we're talking about foreign aid packages, I'd like to have some type of a matching program. Like, let's take 10% or the figure of 10% of what we're sending to other countries and reinvest that immediately back into the problems that we have here in the United States. We have a severe homelessness problem. We have a severe substance use disorder problem. We also have underserved communities, but we have veterans, we have homeless veterans, and we have medical services that I think where we're not serving people here at home properly. And I think with a very small amount of that type of money reinvested back into our system here, we need to make things better here. You see it when you drive around. I see it every day. There are people on street corners begging for money. Some of these situations are due to a number of different things: homelessness, substance use disorder, and mental health. And those things all come together. And I think we really need to address that as a major issue here in the United States. I mean, we can talk infrastructure. There's a lot of places where we need help in our United States. We're talking about roads and bridges. You know, we need a nationwide plan for that. People will talk about the environment and what we need to do with the environment. And yes, you know, we need to acknowledge that we need to be more green. And I understand that. I just think that some of the ways that we're doing that or approaching that now on a state level are making restrictions on businesses and making it difficult for businesses to survive, and putting more mandates. When we put mandates on people from a government standpoint, we're continually telling people what they need to do and how they need to live. And we also need to take into account, is there opportunity? Can the grid actually handle what we're trying to do if we move to expanding the electric? If everybody needs to have an electric car, is that going to work for everybody? Can we have industrial vehicles go to battery operated power? It's very difficult. Some of the technology right now, I don't think has caught up, where you're asking people to, or for one piece of legislation in Rhode Island, for example, we're talking about gas-powered lawn equipment and blowers and things like that. Well, you know, landscaping, you're going to put landscaping businesses out of business, or that's going to be a mandate that's going to be a problem for just that particular sector. So I think we need to look at things, like I said, you know, from a helicopter view of how everything gets affected. Can our infrastructure handle that immediately? And then, do we really want to completely rely on alternative energy sources when we, as a country, have natural resources here? And do we want to just stop the development of technology of our fossil fuel industry, because we can find ways to burn fossil fuels cleaner? We can find ways to still use our resources and use those powers in certain ways. And when you expand that particular subject to further say, okay, well, we're going to rely on another country for some of our energy. And if we get into some type of a global situation, and somebody decides that the United States is going to get cut off, you know, where are we going to be? So we have to think, you know, from a very large perspective, and like I said, that helicopter view of how we're affecting the future. And I understand, you know, people are concerned that we have some global warming. We have issues that do need to be addressed, and we can address those issues. We just need to be very careful how we do it, so that we don't completely eliminate certain businesses and certain ways of life that people enjoy.
If you know, if you had a wish list and you could be effective at one, if you were elected and you could be effective at one thing right out of the gate, whether passing legislation, getting something done, as a freshman in Congress, what would it be?
I truly believe we have a mental health pandemic here in the country itself, and that the mental health issues that we have stem into all different areas. When we talk about you know, we talk about mental health, substance use disorder. As a rescue guy, I see it. We respond to overdoses on a regular basis. We need to find ways to educate people as to, you know, what type of things cause. I think we need education on substance use disorder, addiction. We need to allow and have for more federal funding for wraparound services in our overburdened communities, so that people have more access to substance use therapy and also mental health therapy. A while back, and we also have issues with the elderly population, not having those type of services. We have a growing elderly population that is concerned about losing their dignity and aging in place and being able to remain in their homes. So how do we provide additional services for those type of things so that people don't have to sell their home or have their home or the asset of their home pay for retirement services because they can't take care of themselves or they can't maintain their own property. So are there different ways that we can address those issues for our aging population? I think that's very important as well. But I believe it's kind of all encompassing into this mental health situation. And, we're going to talk, I'm sure we're going to talk about gun violence and things like that, but that's a mental health issue too that needs to be addressed on certain levels as well.
I was going to say, Steve, I had a candidate the other day say, these aren't talking points, I've lived this. And I feel like what you're talking about, and I don't want to put words in your own mouth, but you've lived this, you've seen this firsthand as a first responder.
Yes, I mean, I've experienced a lot of the end result of these things I've experienced. And
that's by then, so yeah.
It's so for me, sometimes it's very difficult to witness the end result. We respond to overdoses on a regular basis. We're an urban community, and there are times when we're successful and there are times when we're not. Overdoses is one item, but then we talk about attempted suicides and successful suicides, and those are very emotional issues. And I've been I've been at the end result of all of these things, and I've seen it. You try to think about, are there ways this could have been prevented? It's all about availability of services. It's all about availability of outreach. Some people label someone who has an addictive personality, they label them as those people. They have a problem. And it's very difficult, but especially with substance use disorder, there's no economic, there's no discrimination with that. It affects every segment of our population. There are people who are very well off who have substance use disorders. There are poor people. There are homeless people. There are people who you would think would never have a problem in the world and could be the happiest folks in the world because they've got a great job and they have what appears to be a great life, but there's something that brings them into this substance use issue. And those are the things where it's all about outreach. It's about being able to talk to people. We need to really create some type of a system. And we do have community providers that help with that. But I think that mental health and substance use is a major, major problem in the United States. We don't address it enough. And again, like I said, it's not, there's no criteria for having that. It affects all segments of our population: rich, poor, wealthy, homeless, people who have their own homes, people who have wonderful jobs. You just don't know. And I think there's a quote that says, don't talk about people or don't try to be kind to everybody because you don't know what their struggle is today. And that's a very telling piece. And if you just think about your own lives, and if you've had a bad day at some point, you have to understand that maybe the shoes that they're walking in are a little bit different than yours, and if it's only for that day. And sometimes that's all it takes. And those are the things that affect me or that I've witnessed, like I said, as a first responder. And I understand how that affects. And the problem with a lot of this is the victim of suicide, the victim of an overdose, is not just the victim. It's the families, it's the friends. It's how do they deal with this? Do they blame themselves? Is it something that they didn't see coming, or could they have made an effort? So there's a lot of victims in this mental health situation. And of course, COVID did a job on all of us where we were shut in. I mean, I had my vaccination and I had to go to work and I had to do my job. as a fireman and a first responder. But there were people who were shut in, people who didn't want to take the vaccine, people who didn't see their parents for. I didn't see. My mom was in a nursing home. My mother-in-law was in a nursing home. We couldn't see our parents for a year. So that was very difficult for people, and to be shut in and be alone and not to be able to have somebody all the time to be able to talk to, even at a short period. And I think with the lifting of all the restrictions, we still have people that are lonely. We have elderly that are lonely, and we need to address those things. We need to provide more services. We need to provide more elderly services, give people an opportunity to spend time at a senior center or wherever they are, so they can socialize and feel like part of the community.
Steve, I want to jump in here, and little did we know that we spend so much time on mental health, but I just got a question from a viewer. Kate says, mental health counselor here, limitations related to insurance reimbursement is a primary barrier with respect to people accessing care. Any ideas?
I will say that, having been the chairman of the Health and Human Services, we come up with this issue all the time, and there are many issues with reimbursement rates for nurses, counselors, CNAs, and all of that. And I think that is an absolutely great point. We need to be able to, if we don't have enough counselors, if we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough doctors who are being reimbursed properly by our Medicare, Medicaid systems, then we're not going to have the capacity to help those people. And I think that is a very legitimate issue, especially here in Rhode Island, where we have Massachusetts borders a very large portion of Rhode Island, and the disparity between reimbursements just between Massachusetts and Rhode Island is so significant that Rhode Island has been losing people in the healthcare industry across all disciplines to Massachusetts and to other states because of our reimbursement. And that's been a major issue for us, and we've been trying to address that on the state level. That is something that federally we might be able to make some changes with.
We talked a lot about mental health and some of the things that you see as a first responder. Tell us something good about Woonsocket. Let's play Tourism Bureau for a little bit, and let's drag the rest of Congressional District 2 and the rest of Rhode Island up there.
Okay, well, Woonsocket is a hub of now great restaurants. We have Main Street is spotted with great restaurants from both sides. But we also have the Stadium Theater, which is a bit of an economic engine for us. Stadium Theater has very, very popular acts. They have started their own. The Stadium Theater Foundation has started with their own school for theater arts, so that is accessible. And you got to look them up on the website. I'm sorry, I don't have it with me right now, but they have programs for children, and it's across all parameters of the theater, from set design to acting, singing, dance, all of those type of things. And they do put on their own productions, their Stadium Theater productions for Christmas shows and certain shows throughout the year. We've got a wonderful World War II Memorial Park where we have our Autumn Fest celebration. We have community events that are on a regular basis. Every Friday night here in the summer, we have the Levitt Amp free music program, where we have artists from all over the country come in and perform. It's free for everybody. It's every Friday night during the summer. I believe it starts at 6 o'clock. There's just a great deal of things going on. Our community programs, the Little League that we have here, very well attended, very, very well run by our community, and all the social clubs within the city get involved with sponsorships. I think that's what really drives everything, is the social clubs within the city are very, very strong sponsors of all the community activities, especially for the children.
Excellent. Just wanted to make sure we give a shout out for all the great things that are happening in Woonsocket. And of course, one of the finest fire departments in the lands.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I will not argue with you.
Steve, what is something if you could, I've been asking this, if you could get one thing about you to every voter in Congressional District 1, I think I may have said 2 earlier, Congressional District 1, What is something you would want every voter to know about you before they vote?
Well, I think for me, what's important is that I think they understand from our interview right now that I have a good sense of what the struggles that our community faces. But for me, it's about relationships. It's about honesty and integrity. I do hold a significant distinction. I am, as we mentioned earlier, I am an Eagle Scout. I am a Mason. The tenets of these institutions are about trustworthy, trust, loyalty, brotherhood, and friendship. It's about meeting people on the level. It's about meeting people and being able to talk to people as at the same level, no matter what their station is in life. I have a deep respect for the human side of things, relationship-wise. And like I said, I think I know exactly what people need, but I'm gonna listen to people and let them tell me what they need and what their ideas are. I will not ever say that I have all the answers. I'm not the expert, but within the community and within this country, there are people that are willing to work and provide ideas. And if we can get all those good ideas on the table and find the things that are going to work for everyone as a whole, then I can sell it. And I think that's what it is. It's about being able to have that relationship with people, to get them to understand that we have good ideas, we need to move forward. And I think I am that person that can do that.
Representative, is there anything that we did not get to today that you were hoping we would?
I think we've generally covered a lot of things that are important. I think there are issues about maybe election integrity, and we talk about certain things that have happened in our election, and there are issues with signatures and things like that. And I don't want to throw stones at people, and that's not my plan. And people have come out and essentially called out another candidate and beat them up regarding their issues. What I want people to know is, for me, and like it was in my first election, this is grassroots. This is family and friends. My dad, who's 79 years old now, he's been with me since day one. We went out and collected signatures together. And the days that I couldn't be there and I was working at the fire department, he came down to Woonsocket and Lincoln and went out on his own and collected signatures for me and passed them into the Board of Canvassers. This is, like I said, it's a family thing for me. My campaign, I don't have campaign staff that's paid to do anything except for creating the website and some media stuff, which I'm not an expert. As you could see, we had trouble signing me onto this, but my campaign is about family. It's about volunteerism, people that believe in what I'm doing. I'm not paying staff to go out and do things, and the people that are involved with me trust what I'm doing, and they want to represent me as well as they can, just on the fact that they believe that I'm the candidate that can do the job.
Well, Representative, I thank you for taking the time to join us today. If people want to learn more about your campaign, they can visit caseyforcongressri.com. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody. Please go out and vote on September 5th. It's a very important day for Rhode Island, and I hope you can support me. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Representative. That is Representative Stephen Casey, who is running as a Democrat in a primary for Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District. If you missed any portion of this interview, you want to watch it again, you can find it on whatsupnuke.com. Again, his website is caseyforcongressri.com, CASEYFORCONGRESSRI.com, caseyforcongressri.com. Thanks for